Trump, excuse me, Jay Powell has been draining the eurodollars with higher interest rates. Plus, you have war on Europe, so you're going to have capital fleeing Europe anyway. That's going to expand. You have the deindustrialization and impoverishment of Germany, France, and Britain. So, Britain and Germany are uninvestable. I assume France is as well. So capital is going to flow. You've got all these policies that Trump is putting in place to encourage investment and the reindustrialization of America. So money's moving in. So then how are they going to get their VIG, the City of London? Well, we'll carry on with the drug trade because we have done this before. We did this with China and the opium trade, and we've been doing it for years with fentanyl. We have
Well,
track record. This has worked.
drug trade and arms trade, the militarization. And that's ultimately, if you look at AI, it's increasingly oriented uh, toward warfare, toward defense, toward surveillance, toward police state. And it's openly so, as I pointed out in this Washington Post interview. So this is not a big secret to people in Washington, but most people around the country get enthusiastic about the idea of different kinds of technologies and devices. And they miss the point that this is the takeaway of their freedom.
Yeah, and our creativity. I've
Yeah.
I've, I've noticed that it becomes easier, but then I don't need to think so much. So then I'm not exercising my brain, and I know it because in my job as a social worker, when I have a meeting with parents and schools and stuff like that, we have an AI system that it won't record it. Well, it will, but what it does, it paraphrases it. So then there's no requirement on the part of my brain to input as much as it did before. So I've stopped using it. So over the long term, that'll atrophy, and I need to do what I can to preserve what few brain cells I have in order to keep Alex awake, at least.
No, but we're getting off subject, but I think it's very fascinating because on the one hand, AI is limited. First time when you come in contact with it the first time, you may not recognize it. And when somebody tells you this was all generated by AI, you'd be like, oh my God, amazing. But then when you've listened to it, like the people who put together video reports
Yeah.
with AI, it's kind of the same. Like
Yes.
we are very powerful. One of our very powerful faculties is pattern recognition. And so once you've been exposed to AI repeatedly, you start recognizing it. And the effect to me is like immediate yawn factor. I'm no longer interested, and I immediately switch it off because it sounds the same. It sounds boring. It's not compelling. I need the human element. And so I think that they kind of extrapolated the potential of AI to something that's unrealistic. I think it's going to fall short of that, very significantly short of that. But I find it very useful in some ways. Like I write articles every day for my newsletter, and somebody said like, "Oh, you should try using AI." And so I thought, okay, good, let's try. AI generates text that I can't use because when I read it, that's not me, and people will recognize it. So it's almost like cheating,
Yeah.
Like like if you go to a restaurant and you order a meal and somebody just opens a can and warms it up for you, and it wouldn't work. People are not stupid. But on the other hand, the other day I needed something that I read in a book probably 20 years ago, and I took notes because it had to do with the human immune system. And I found this fascinating, and it's not generally because it's based on mathematical simulation. So it's not generally discussed out in the open. I lost those notes, and I had to throw away that book. It's a long story, but like the book caught mold. I had to throw it away. So I don't have the book. I don't have my notes anymore. And I just have a very vague recollection of what the hell the thing was. And so now since I paid freaking Elon Musk's almost $600 a year, X subscription, I thought, okay, I'll use his grok. I'll ask the question. So I said, what was that Stuart Kaufman's hypothesis about human immune system ability to generate antigens for anything? It took like 2 seconds, and the whole thing came out. Where it is, the book, the title of the book, what his hypothesis is, the details of his argument. I swear, just 20 seconds. And I must have spent hours looking for my notes to find that exact thing. And I was even considering buying the book again, except you can't. It's no longer even on Amazon. It's not listed. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to live with the rest of my life with that big hole in my knowledge. But there, for that reason, I mean,
well, Alex, you make a good point and good argument, but there's a flaw in it, and I'm going to bring it back to the political sphere using AI. So, in England, the UK, Britain England have a Bill of Rights, 1688 Bill of Rights. And there's a few clauses in there.
I'm sorry, which one? 1688?
1688 Bill of Rights.
Well, that's the Glorious Revolution.
Yeah.
The Dutch takeover.
Alex, you fell asleep in my videos with Ian Burlingham and Graham Moore, where we talk about this once a month. Shame on you, I'm going to tell them. Anyway, the 1688 Bill of Rights, and there's a few clauses in there that are really, really important. One of them is that the people are sovereign, not Parliament. Parliament are representatives of the people. They cannot pass any laws that are to the pejorative of the people. And the House of Lords has a particular role as set out in the Bill of Rights. But there's also something in there that says that these rights are for perpetuity. They cannot have any derogations. They cannot be amended in any way. They're forever. The bit about derogations, they cannot be any derogations, has been omitted from a lot of the online representations. And I think it was in 1947, Graham Moore did a short video about this on his channel on Rumble, where they talked about there was an act, I think in 1947, where they took out that bit in the footnotes to the act. So they didn't explicitly remove it. So it's unconstitutional because only a constitution of parliament could change it. But if you go to Grok or ChatGPT and you ask about this bit, they'll say it's not in there because they're only as good as the information that's fed in. And
Yes.
Grok and ChatGPT have both told me that 0.04% carbon dioxide is a bigger influence on the Earth's climate than the sun. Wow. So don't breathe out. You're destroying life if you breathe out. Anyway,
we need to get rid of all the cows. That's that.
We need to get rid of all the cows. That's right. So that we can die of hunger instead of global warming.
Well, yes. But this gets to the whole question of soft power and the ability to, one of the things they talk about is pre-bunking, not just debunking so-called disinformation, but changing the way people think so they don't even address these questions. Like you just brought up the 1688 revolution. How many people know what was really accomplished then? Who was running it? What was the purpose? And if you take away that kind of information, that kind of crucial intelligence, how do you make decisions? And what pre-bunking is based on, the idea that you don't even consider that the information you're getting is false or doctored. And so you're left with no option except to swallow what's presented to you. Yes. And this is where you see the whole line that Russia's intervention in Ukraine was unprovoked. And if you go to Grok, they'll tell you it was unprovoked.
Wow. Oh my gosh. It's nothing about the Maidan coup and the 15,000 bombed in 8 years, 15,000 people killed in 8 years by the Ukrainian in the Donbass.
Well, if you ask specific questions, you can probably get that. But if you ask the overall question, why is there a war in Ukraine? They'll say Putin's intervention in February 2022.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. With AI, you have to know how to ask questions, because if you ask just like a very general question about something, you'll get the conventional wisdom. You'll get what most literature says about it. But then if you ask very probing questions about certain aspects of these events, you will get what you're looking for, but not easily. Like you have to, it's kind of like pulling teeth.
But then you've got to know that there's more to it, or have some idea.
Yes. If you don't know that there's more to it, you won't find it. But if you do, and you kind of insist, I swear I had an experience with DeepSeek, where like I was researching the Bolshevik Revolution, and I was checking certain claims because there's a lot of claims in that were put out by in the 30s, 40s, 50s by anti-communist movements in the United States. They made a lot of claims that maybe weren't really true. So I was just verifying, did this happen? Did that happen? And so forth. And you see that it's almost discouraging you from that topic. And in one case, I promise, DeepSeek was starting to give me an answer that the answer was starting to be written out. And it was kind of what I hoped to find. But then after a few seconds, it erased the whole answer and it said, sorry, this is outside of my domain. Ask me another question.
Wow.
That's why you have to stay awake for Rich's podcasts.
Yes.
You can think about how to frame the proper questions. I mean, it's true. Asking the right question oftentimes is the key to the discovery because it's outside of the common, generally accepted arguments. And that's where you see the failure of the education system, or I should say, the success of shifting education from classical tradition to just fact and connection of dots.
Well, I would say that there was even the shifting. It was flawed beforehand, and I say this because with reference to the fact that the British brought schools to India, and not as a philanthropic exercise, but in order to subjugate the population and train them in, we are your lords and masters. Listen to us, not your gods. Do as we say, and not what your parents say. So, and then disconnecting people from their own traditions and forms of knowledge and giving them this imperial form of knowledge, which is what we have now. And then I recorded a video with Ian Burlingame and Jana London, who says, hi, Alex. And I just tell her that Alex slept all the way through that video. But we talk about how it's being used how it's so blatantly being used in Ireland. And I see it in England in my job as a social worker, where children are being taught that carbon dioxide isn't about photosynthesis, but it's about climate change, and that it's and then the whole sexualization agenda and the trans agenda that's being rolled out in schools as a way of destroying the family, destroying our sense of ourselves, any sense of autonomy or agency that we might have, leaving us confused and muddled so that we're easier to lead.
This is what Lavrov calls the post-Christian society, or otherwise the post-truth era.
Who said this, Harley?
Lavrov.
Okay.
We're in post-Christian civilization in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, I would also mention one giant of intellect, Yuval Noah Harari, who said that us being a divine creation with a unique soul, complex individuals, that's all over. We're now just hackable animals.
And I think that whole another way why this whole enterprise will fail, the Great Reset, the AI agenda and stuff, is it doesn't have any acknowledgement of consciousness, of universal consciousness, of the ether, energy, whatever you call it, Allah, Jehovah, God. That aspect is completely missing. And I think it's really, really important for human beings. It's so central to our existence. Whether people are living with some animist tradition, stay awake, Alex, with some animist traditions in the Amazonian jungle, or as Muslims, Sufi Muslims somewhere, or Christians or Jews or Hindus or whatever, human beings have to have faith. There's no humanity without faith.
And also love, because it replaces love of mankind with love of self, love of image, being able to vibe with your peers. And when you remove the actual question of how you express love for humanity and replace it with self-gratification, that goes a long way. This is what Tavistock Institute was looking at in the 60s and 70s.
Wow. Holly, that's a really valid point, because there's not enough talk about love, the importance of love, because it is our love for humanity that has us acting out of, self-interest ultimately, but acting altruistically.
The creative potential of the other.
Yeah, and it is
our interest.
So I just want to get a plug in. This is a great point. It is out of our love for humanity that people in the UK can go to notaxforwar.com, as well as self-interest, because we want to keep our own money and not, give this government more money to build this digital gulag that they want to build for us. Okay, shall we go back to hard politics? I have a question about Germany,
Sure.
which is what's happening with the AfD in Germany and how are they being treated?
Well, they're growing, and the evidence of this was they had a youth conference this last weekend, and initially it was reported there were 100,000 demonstrators against it. And then eventually, as they lowered and lowered the estimates, it came down to 15,000. Now, that's still pretty much of a demonstration. But the story now is that Merz is losing the opportunity, if he really wants to ban the AfD. They're growing outside of the range where it would be accepted by most people. And there are some estimates that the AfD is over 30%, 33% even. And Merz continues to decline. The Social Democrats are declining. There's a possibility of an alliance between the Wagenknecht and the AfD, although that's mostly speculative. But the idea of throwing out a party completely because you don't like their policy, to the extent that the AfD is able to put forward what they're actually standing for. And for example, last week there was a whole debate. The AfD sent some representatives to a meeting in Sochi on the Europe and the Belt and Road Initiative, the Eurasian perspective. And this broke into the press very briefly and then was completely removed because they don't want people to know that there are actually people in Germany who don't think we should be going to war with Russia.
Wow. Okay, smart people. And when are the next elections in Germany, Harley?
I think it's 27. It's not coming up quickly, but that can change. I mean, Merz is skating on very thin ice. The collapse of the auto sector, I mentioned this BDI report. If you have industrialists and businesses clamoring for change, then it might get down to the street. And the problem is on the street, they have a sense that there's no one's listening to them. And so that's why the censorship is so important.
Alex?
Going back to the Bolshevik Revolution, since I've been immersed in that for the last 3 weeks, what I found very amazing is the ideology they brought forward and the absolute utter ruthlessness with which they dealt with the traditional sectors of the Russian society, which was the biggest majority of the people. You know, the Bolsheviks practically had no chance to prevail, but for literally tens of thousands of revolutionaries imported from abroad. In our money, hundreds of millions of support by Western bankers, and then I think up to 300,000 or 400,000 troops from the United States, Britain, France, Japan, and many other countries. And then their idea, the ideology they brought based on Marxism, was to deal with complete utter ruthlessness with all opposition, so that they were eliminating people who came from, well-to-do families. They were killing people who were good looking because they thought that they would be. They killed something like 40,000 clergymen because they wanted to completely destroy the church. They eliminated all opposition, took complete monopoly over the media and the public opinion, propaganda. They destroyed all the banks. They just simply canceled all the banks one day and consolidated all of Russia's banking under one bank. And the fact that all this failed, and like people were being put away in prison for things like antisocial thinking. Like they were literally executing people for antisocial thinking.
Is this Bolshevik Russia or the United Kingdom under Starmer?
No. I was talking about Russia. I know. I forgot to mention, and everything I'm saying, you're thinking I was talking about
UK. That's right.
No. I was talking about. But anyway, like in spite of all that, and in spite of the fact that the system survived for almost 3 generations, it wasn't able to hold. And the lie was so big that it propagated itself everywhere around the world. I mean, I grew up in the communist world. we were supposed to study Marxism. We did, Marxism was an obligatory part of the curriculum. So we were being taught all those lies in school, that was part of the curriculum, and it still failed. And I would bet that generation of leaders 100 years ago and our generation of leaders today are not the first and they're not the last ones who want to enslave humanity and create like a caste system where, you have this upper class of slave owners, then you have a class of enforcers, the managers, and then you have the termites. We're not dealing with the first instance of ruling elites wanting to turn us into hackable animals and create some kind of a dystopian future where they control everything and we just have to submit. It's just
if I could just jump in for a second, Alex.
Yeah.
If you look at what happened in 1988, 89 in Germany, Honecker was saying that this is going to be a 1,000-year Reich, the East German Republic. And literally overnight, it was overturned.
Yes.
And I think we're approaching potentially a similar situation where the lies are so blatant and the distance between people's experience and their ability to have some kind of comfort in the standard of living and the lies they're being told, we're approaching that kind of discontinuity.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
I've just got to say, because we do need to finish up.
Yeah, I just want to finish by saying it failed every time. So it's going to fail this time as well. But, what we can do now is make it fail faster rather than letting it live for 3 generations and having our children deal with it.
Yeah, well, information spreads much faster, and one way that people can spread this information is by sharing this video and subscribing and following Harley and his work with LaRouche organization, and also Alex Naked Hedgie, and I'll have the links in the description below. And do try and stay awake through my videos, but especially when Alex is on. If you've managed this, if you're still awake after Alex, please let us know in the comments. Really, really great. Love talking to you guys. We'll do this again in a month's time. This is Crypto Rich and Alex and Harley signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.